Hi. By 1972, I became a Teamster. I became the second Teamster in the United States. That's what I was told anyway. I don't know. I was told I was the second Teamster in the United States and the first one in Chicago. What had happened is I had passed the state trooper's exam, and I took that notice, that piece of paper, to the Hostess Cupcake. They had an ad that they were looking for drivers, and I took that to them, and they were stunned. They said, a female? Because they'd never had a female. They'd never had a female driver in the city of Chicago. And they didn't realize this, but I was told that the first female Teamster in the United States was, I believe, in Texas. I'm not sure now, but that I was the second one. That's what the Teamsters Union told me anyway. Who knows? But the point is, I did it. I did it. I did it. You know, and it was really important. It was very important to me because I was in my 20s. And I had been trying to break the glass ceiling since I was in school, high school, grade school. I mean, come on. You know, I was born to a woman who didn't want a girl, and so I just fought, and I fought, and I fought, and I fought. I tried so many ways to fight. I told you my first word was button, not mommy, button. Being a real... Gosh, you know, they tell me to say the word feminist, but I'm not sure if that's the right word, and I'm wondering if that separated us too much. I just wanted to be equal. I didn't want anything else. I just wanted to be the same. So here's what happened. I had experience in working with men, boys, my life, competing against boys. And this was to be my opportunity to be a part of the kinship, the teamwork, the problems and the solutions of being a Hostess Cupcake driver in the city of Chicago, in one of the worst areas. And that's the truth. We had... or I had anyway, I'm not sure if everybody wore this, but I wore a big ring on my waist. My pants were identical to everybody else's, and I started out with the men's shirts, but they ended up tailoring a shirt a little better for me. One of the things I learned right away, I hate cold. God, I hate cold. I really hate cold. I mean, I have to emphasize, I really hate cold. You know what? It's not warm in Chicago. So I had to figure out and I figured out from the guys, what do I have to do? And they said, keep your kidneys warm. I said, really? And they said, yep, that's the trick. You get yourself a long vest that's incredibly warm, because your arms need to be free, because you're constantly moving your arms. You're either driving, or you're putting up cake, or you're putting cake on the shelves. You're putting up cake in your basket from the warehouse, or you're putting it up on the shelves all the time. I mean, your arms are constantly moving, so you don't have to worry about your arms, but your kidneys, that's where you get it. That's what gets you cold. So I took their advice. I went and I got a down-filled vest that was really long and covered my kidneys. And guess what? It worked. I mean, I was so surprised. One of the early things that happened is in working, I don't see color, and so that was never an issue. In fact, one of my supervisors was black, and almost everybody I worked with was black. So these were black males. We entered a parking area in our vehicles. I didn't do that. I actually came by bus, train. Anyway, the parking area was all chain link, but it was really high. It was really, really high, and then it was completely covered with razor wire. So it was real clear real soon that the issue we were dealing with was security. We had to have security.
But what I learned real quick when I went to put up on my first cake, that you had to check your cake. The racks were in your truck, but you had to go and you had to check it before you started out and replace all your rat-eaten product, because there were always rats, because it was a warehouse and it was full of trucks full of cake. I mean, you don't have to think animals are absolutely brilliant to figure out that the rats would want to eat the Hostess cupcakes. So we would go in and do that. Well, I hadn't been there awfully long, but long enough that the guys realized I was one of them. And I went in one morning, and this young man was, I think he was younger than me, but anyway, he was a young man. And he was standing in the back of his truck, and he's screaming, "Jackie, Jackie, 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 Jackie." So I go running over there to see and there was a mouse staring at him, a rat, not a mouse, they're big rats, staring at him. And I had told the other men that, no, the rats really didn't bother me, because from a very early age in my life, I spent most of my time with my dad. Anytime he was home, I was with my dad, and we were usually fishing, and we fished along the wharfs, and there were lots of rats. I mean, they were just, you look, and they were as big as cats, some of them. They were big, they were rats. And that it really wasn't an issue for me, and I really didn't have trouble with snakes either, because my sons always had snakes, and I had a son at an early age, and he had snakes in the house. And I also had rats, because my ex-husband, my husband at the time, was a student at the University of Illinois in psychology, and he had lots of lab rats. And I used to keep lab rats at the house because I thought they were cute. And one of the things that you learn when you live in a big city like Chicago is that if you put a lab rat on your shoulder when you answer the front door, you really don't have to worry about who's there, because it startles them. And if it's somebody you don't want to deal with, you just close the door, because they're shocked that you have a rat on your shoulder. I know that sounds funny, but I really like animals, so I never really concerned myself with the fact that there were rats. And so this young man is screaming, and I run up, and sure enough, there's a rat. And so I just grabbed the thing and get the rat out of there. I grabbed the basket and get the rat out of there. And told him, "Hey, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay." Everybody has something that is a trigger, and that's just a trigger. Don't be concerned about it. It's just a trigger, and it's not a trigger for me, but it's a trigger for you. And he said, "Well, yeah, there were rats in my crib when I was a kid." And I said, "Well, sure. If you have something like that frightens you, of course it's going to be a trigger." But I haven't had that case. It was a positive thing for me, because it was time with my dad, and he was in the military, and he was gone all the time. So the rat was a positive experience when I was fishing with my dad. I mean, everything comes together in life in different ways, and we all have to understand that. And if we can do that in a way that expresses something to other people that doesn't say, "Oh, well, I'm so arrogant more than you. The rats don't bother me." No, you explain to them why, and you explain it with respect and dignity. Why doesn't a rat bother me, and why does a rat bother you, and why is that okay? And I don't care if you're a male or a female. It's still it's a trigger. It's not about being male or female. It's about having a trigger. That's all. Anyway. And there would be so many things that happened. Oh, gosh, there were so many weird things. Like, one of the things we did is we had relatively high seats, because these were vans, and the vans were full of the cake. And we would take the cash, because the little stores always gave us cash. The big stores would just give us invoices, but the little stores gave us cash. And we would reach under our seat and put the cash there was a box that was metal that was welded to the bottom of the floor of the van, but there was enough space for your hand to go in there and put it in the slot. And so every time you came from back, you would put it in the slot. and then, drive to the next place. Well, at one point, one of the guys, they cut out the side of his van and they cut out the box. And of course, they warned me. They told me that had happened because we shared information. We were buddies. We told each other when there was something going on. We tried to keep in touch, and we tried to let each other know what happened. Anyway, I had this big ring on my pants, my slacks, that was attached to the loop, the belt loop, to make sure that it was really, really attached. And that was the key to the van, because the van was always locked. And I would open the key, throw back the van, then grab my hand again and throw it behind me as quickly as possible, because somebody was always trying to get in the van. I mean, that's what they did. They wanted to get in and either steal the cake or try to steal the money, which was, of course, harder, but still that's what they would do. And many times I would be in the van putting up cake, whether in the back or in the front, and there would be people at both doors trying to get in. That's why I always had to keep it locked. And of course, I was the only girl. So of course, when people realized there was a girl, female in the truck, they wanted to come and try to get into the truck. But apparently, the using a letter from the Illinois State Trooper that I had been approved showed that I was probably tough enough to do the job. And to tell you the truth, I loved the job. I really loved the job. It was daylight hours, and I just really liked it. But when I went back to school, I needed to work at night. And I hated working at night, but I really had no choice. But it was real easy for me to also get on the night shift. And so I did that when I was in school until I fell asleep one day, and then I dropped out of art school because I was so embarrassed. And to this day, I'm sorry I did that. I really am, because I love that school so much. I loved the art training so much. I wanted so badly to have a permanent job like that. And I really looked forward to it. I looked forward to having a permanent position. And it led to my husband that graduated from the University of Illinois with his doctorate in psychology, and he was hired, and I, of course, moved with him. And when I did, I applied for another route sales jobs because I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I loved it. And I had dropped out of school, so I was free to work a day job. And I applied to Frito-Lay. And Frito-Lay put me on my own. I mean, really on my own. I had a storage garage like one would normally have for furniture and that sort of thing. The storage garage was filled with my chips. And then I had a van, the same kind of van that I had before. But I had a incredibly long, very, very rural route, which, of course, I loved the rural. And I did well. In fact, I was on the cover. Her Pursuit is Extra Sales was the name of the article that they wrote about me in the 70s for having been a really successful saleswoman. I made enormous stacks of displays in these little tiny stores, and I serviced them with nothing but absolute joy. I really enjoyed, I loved working with little store. I had some big stores too, of course, because you can't make a living when it takes a tremendous amount of gas when you're running all to these little stores, and because we had really bad weather. Weather was a real issue in Iowa, the same as it was in Chicago. Lots of times I would have to start my route at 3:30 in the morning. And what I used to do, because we were living in Bettendorf, Iowa, what I used to do, I would leave the apartment at that hour, and I would get behind a semi. And that was my best bet, because so often there was snow on the ground. And if you got behind a semi, they would blow it off. You had to stay pretty close. And I did. And that's how I was able to be able to drive that early in the morning, even though there was so much snow on the ground. Because we didn't have chains. We had tires, good heavy tires, but we didn't have chains. So when there was a lot of snow, it really was a challenge, because we had to be able to make it at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning in order to get to all the stores. And of course you have to first go to your locker. So usually that wasn't too bad, because that was in the main part of the city. The storage lockers, the garages that were for storage. And usually they had something you could use 24 hours a day, cards to get in and out. So that wasn't a problem. But the problem was getting on the roads and staying on the roads and getting your job done. But I was good at it, and I really loved it. But at one point, I had a really bad whiplash. I had been carrying the boxes, and I hit the rear view mirror and really hurt myself. And so I had to go on disability and stop my job. And it just absolutely didn't want to heal, because it also damaged my back. And it was really hard. It was really hard, because I tried, to get into the state trooper. I was very successful with hostess cake, both working at night and working during the day. And I loved the work. It kept you thin and strong, and and I loved working with people who were so accepting of me, and I was so glad to work with them. I really loved the hours with Frito-Lay, because the idea of starting really never any later than 4 o'clock in the morning and being done early afternoon was absolute heaven for me. I just enjoyed it so much, because I was able to be home when my kids got home from school. And oh gosh, I loved that. I really, really loved that. And I was available to assist my ex-husband when he was needing to study. And oftentimes we worked with study groups, because he was, he had companions and fellow teachers, and it was really special. I really enjoyed it. And I was a real mom, because I was home when they came home in the afternoon. The breakfast thing is not so hard for kids, because the kids were older, but being with them in the afternoon was real special. So that's my story of being a Teamster. That's my feminist story. And if I hadn't gotten hurt, I probably would have stayed there for a long time, because boy, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much. I love being in rural areas. I loved being around the farms. And as I told you so many times, I'm a deep ecologist. And I really enjoyed being out in the farms in the small areas and getting to know the people who were running the little grocery stores and talking to farmers about their cows or their pigs or the goats or whatever they were, with a level of respect and dignity and authority that comes from having been born on a farm. It was really right. It was really special, very, very special time in my life, and helping to break that glass ceiling, but get through to where women were accepted in different jobs, and jobs that required. Of course, required not only your personality and your strength, but also your willingness to be out by yourself in that kind of a situation where you're a long ways away from any help, and enjoying yourself and really doing a good job and really having a lot of fun in the process. Besides making a good living, it was awesome. It was really awesome. I loved working for Hostess and I loved working for Frito-Lay, but unfortunately, both of those foods were not in line with my diet for sure, and in what I believe in, and that was tough too. One of the one of the stores that was selling more organic food and vegan food would have been so much better for me. But at the time, I was the wife of a student, and you have to do what you have to do when you have to do it. And that's the most wonderful thing about being retired, is because you can finally live your core and not have to let economics get in the way. It's really, really special. Okay, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments. I'll check down there and see what's going on. And when you're down there, you might check out my nonprofit. The nonprofit I've worked with for 34 years is called Summerland. And there's artwork down there by both myself and another lady regarding taking care of the earth. So hope to see you there. Hope to see you here again soon, too. Thank you.